She's She's originally from Marshalltown, Iowa, graduated from Carleton College with a degree in biology and Russian studies, and then received her master's in library and information science from the University of Iowa. She has worked at Fondren for over 30 years in a variety of positions. As Vice Provost and Librarian, her role is to provide vision, leadership, and strategic direction for the library, ensuring it helps advance the university's research and teaching missions. She is, of course, interested in the future of libraries, and that's what she's going to speak to us about today.
Great, thanks, Anne. So Amanda, can I share my screen? Yes. Okay.
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay, great. Okay, can you all see that screen?
Not yet.
No. How about now?
Not yet. It might help if you click in share and start that process over. I know sometimes you get a little stuck.
Click on what, Amanda?
If you click in share and then start that process over by going to share screen at the bottom.
Okay.
There we go. I think it's loading.
There it is.
Now we can see. Yes.
Okay, that looks like, yes, we're finally there. You'd think I'd be better at this after almost 2 years of it, but anyway, thank you, Anne. So I've worked at Rice a long time, since 1985. I started out as a reference science collection development librarian and have had a variety of positions here. And sometimes people will say, you know, gosh, you worked at Rice for 35 years, but you know, it's been so interesting and I have just enjoyed it so much. And I wish that we were in person because you know, being a librarian, I really enjoy meeting people. And that's one of the things I like best about my job is working with faculty and working with students and hearing about all their interesting and exciting projects they're working on. And we have a very social group of librarians here at the library. We really enjoy working with students, faculty, and the community on their projects. This first image is the Fondren Library, the old building, which was built in 1947. And it's named for Walter William Fondren, who was the founder of Humble Oil Company, which is now known as Exxon. So this is probably the part of the building that most of you are familiar with when you were a student. The original library on campus was in Lovett Hall. So I'm going to talk about the library in the past and the future and all the different things that we're doing now to support teaching and research. So, you know, I love old pictures of the building. This is the Fondren Library when you first came in the door in the in the mid 40s. And you can see this gentleman in the office. I actually used that office when I first came to the library in 1985. That's where the reference collection development offices were. And you can see the card catalog over there on the right. So that is all been completely renovated now and is very different. So many of the things that we do in the library are very different from in the past, but we still have you know, a common mission of providing information and helping people find information and then reconstitute it. So here's the building in 1948. And then on the right, you'll see an image of a green screen, and that's to represent sort of all the new services that we do. And I'm going to talk a lot about that today, but a lot of what the staff does is help people create their own content. So I know you said Julie Connor's an author, so she's creating content out there, and that's sort of the new thing. Everybody finds information, then kind of makes it their own, recaptures it, recreates things in a form of a book or a musical performance or something. So the library really helps with that process. And I think, you know, looking at what libraries do, a lot of industries have been completely transformed by technology and the internet. But I think libraries in the publishing industry have to be at the top of the list as one of the things that have changed the most in the last 20 years since we really started with the internet. And so that's very exciting and very different. So I wanted to share with you the mission statement of the Fondren Library. We are very much a mission-driven organization. We do a lot of user experience. We spend a lot of time talking to the Rice community about what they want the library to be doing, what they expect for us to do. So we try to stay current with things and do a lot of focus groups and surveys so that we are sure that we're meeting our campus needs. We do a lot of strategic planning here, working on mirroring the vision for the second century, which is the university's strategic plan. So this is our vision statement. We spend a lot of time thinking about the library of the 21st century, and that's what Anne had asked me to talk about, the modern research library. So I'll talk about this, but we were very focused on services, experimentation. Some of you have probably been to those immersive experiences on Van Gogh or the space thing. A lot of libraries are getting into visualization services and computer modeling centers, and I'll talk a little bit about that coming up. One thing that has happened in the last 20 years in higher education is this whole social nature of learning. Back when I was in college, we wrote a lot of term papers where we would go to the library, do research, go off and write our paper. But now a lot of students work together on group projects. So they'll have a project, they may create a podcast, they may create a presentation, but they have to be able to work together on teams. And the library helps foster that by providing spaces for them to do that, places to work together in a group. So, you know, this picture is an image of students working together, and you'll see a lot of that in the library today. So some of the things that we do, you know, obviously we have really strong collections, but we also offer data curation services. We have a Kelly Center for Government Information. I'm going to talk about the Fondren Fellows Program. We do a lot of support on campus for various programs and committees such as the Kinder Institute. But one that's been really exciting in the last couple of years is the work of the library staff with the Task Force on Slavery, Segregation, and Racial Injustice. And then one of our really key roles is with workshops and training. So just want to be sure you all know we do have books. We have a lot of books. We have about 3 million books. This is a picture of our library service center. And for those of you who don't know about this, probably in the early 2000s, Raymond and Susan Brockstein donated some land down South Main Street to the library, kind of near the Brockstein Furniture Company. And we built this storage facility where we can store up to about 1.8 million volume equivalents. So out there, it's a high density storage facility, and you can see these books are stored by size, and similar to like a factory or a storage warehouse. We have an order picker. We retrieve books from there twice a day. We scan articles directly to people's desktops there. And the first module was full, and we were able to build a new module that opened last summer. So this has been a really key thing for the library to accept collections like the Jewish archive that Josh Furman and Matthias Henze are working on, for us to accept lots of different special collections. Before we built this, we had a real space problem. We didn't have anywhere to put donations of large collections and records. So we're very, very happy to have this storage facility, and it's worked really, really well. So just a few examples of things that we do have, books. We have Shakespeare's First Folio, and we have, this is a rare book from our History of Science collection. This is a scan of Nicholas Copernicus's De Revolutionitas Orbium Coelestium from 1566. So a lot of our rare books are stored in that storage facility out on South Main Street. And what's great about that is it's climate controlled. We had engineers who worked on the penguin exhibit from the Moody Center help design this low humidity, cold storage area. So it's really an excellent environment for our rare books. And they're actually very, very safe there because you wouldn't really know how to find them. If you went in there, it's like Raiders of the Lost Ark with just millions of shelves of books. Well, not millions of shelves, but millions of items out there. We can find them through barcodes, but it's really something. If you all ever want to have a tour of that'd be kind of a fun thing to do if you're looking for program ideas. So the Woodson Research Center is really just one of the most wonderful places on campus. Research libraries used to be, we would count the number of books that we had, and that would be something that you would rank libraries on. The Harvard Library has 16 million books. The Rice Library has 3 million books. Now with these mass digitization projects, the number of books you have it's important, but we can get books from people within 2 or 3 days with interlibrary loan. Other universities can scan chapters for our researchers really quickly, but really what makes your library exceptional are your rare books and your archival collections, your primary source materials. Like a few years ago, we got the records from the DePelchin Institute, and I think that was a source of several history faculty or history graduate students' dissertations. So those are the really important things for a library, are those primary source materials, those really interesting history of science collections. We have oral histories in the Woodson Research Center, the Asian American Archive that Ann Chow and the Chow Center have been working on. Just a lot of really, really fascinating materials in the Woodson Research Center. So I encourage all of you to also visit the Woodson. They just have really interesting things in there. So one of the things that during the pandemic, of course, a lot of the research that people did had to be remote, and we had to restrict access to the library off and on during the pandemic with university policies about meetings and people. So the Woodson staff did a lot of work presenting to classes remotely. And this is just kind of an image of the way they scrambled with that. And they literally have hundreds of people visiting the Woodson every year, looking at things. They have collections of NASA astronaut helmets and just all kinds of really quirky things that might be interesting to look at. One of the things that the Woodson staff did this last year is support the Task Force on Slavery, Segregation, and Racial Injustice. And I'm sure most of you have heard about the work of history professors Caleb McDaniel and Alex Bird. And they have, I would encourage all of you to look at their website, but they have different parts to that task force. I think there's 22 members of the task force, and they've been looking at education, research, and doing things like researching the history of the statue of William Marsh Rice. And working with Drs. Bird and McDaniel, we hired a history postdoc student to work with the Woodson staff, and they've been scanning and digitizing. A lot of the early records of the university had never been digitized. And with that, they've been doing research on the history of the statue, which has really come up with all these discussions and student protests about what to do about the statue, and are William Marsh Rice's ashes really there, and what were the parameters around the gift from the family, and doing really deep historical research about all those questions. On Fridays, they have something called Doc Talks, where they actually look at historical documents about the early years of the university. And here you'll see two of the archive staff presenting at those Doc Talks. So they're actually document talks looking at primary source material, letters from William Marsh Rice, looking at things like, was William Marsh Rice a slave owner? How many slaves did he own? So they can look at all of those early records about his cotton trading and answer questions that help inform decisions about what to do with the statue. And I'm sure all of you have been following all that. That's a board committee is looking into that all now, but the research from the Woodson staff has really informed a lot of the discussion on campus about that. Another thing that the university archives is involved with is, this is Amanda Foke, who's the head of special collections, and she's putting up an exhibit that we had in the library that the Chow Center had some staff work on about the feelings of Asian people with the pandemic. And they had an actual dancer come and do an interpretive dance about Asian people being racially targeted. And they did an exhibit on that called The Portal of Healing. So that was very interesting. So the Woodson, is one of our key areas of activity. They have hundreds of people, and this just kind of gives you some numbers about people visiting campus and experiencing things in the Woodson. So they have rare books, archives, and all these different collections of memorabilia from the university. So if you ever get a chance, you should pop into the Woodson. It's a fun place to visit. Another really important thing for the Library of the Future is how we support data and data analysis, digital media, GIS data projects. So that division of the library is called Digital Scholarship Services. And we probably have about 25 staff members working in this area. So the library, in the past, and this is a conversation I had with a faculty member last week, and he was calling about working on something, at the Baker Institute. And he said, I just have to compliment you on the staff. And in the past, it used to be how many books a library had is what made it important. But he said, now it's the staff, and we have such great, competent staff. So that really made my day, because I think that's been a real focus, is not away from the books and the print materials and the digital collections, but really hiring staff with this like ability to support data projects. So this research data services is a collaboration between the library and Office of Information Technology, and then parts of campus that teach data classes. So students will come in and they'll have to do a project, and they won't know how to find data collections. We help teach classes in how to use SQL, Access, Python, all kinds of programming classes. And then because we're a government depository library, we have all kinds of census data and data that people can use in their classes. Yeah. So some of the questions students might ask are, if they have to analyze or organize their data, where can they take training classes? How can they download bibliographic information and manage all of these articles they find? How do you make a podcast? If one of your faculty members said to me, instead of writing a term paper, you have to create a podcast, how would you know how to use that software or print a poster or something? So the library staff can help with all those things, mainly with training and then finding the data. But you see a list over there. Those are the kind of classes that the library staff teach now. So, this is a big change over the last 10 years in the library, having staff that can teach digital preservation or work on, how to use metadata. And a project that we've been supporting is that Slave Voyages project. And I don't know if any of you have heard about that with Professor Daniel Dominguez, but he has started this project at Emory, and it recently moved to Rice, but they have records of all of these slave ships, and they can look at the names of every person that was on the slave ship, and the library is helping organize all of that data in these databases. The Digital Media Commons is a part of the library in the basement, and that's where students go to make podcasts, make the posters for their research competitions, that kind of thing. We'll have Shepherd School of Music students come in and they need to have help making a performance tape that they can send off to different symphonies when they're applying for a job. So we have recording studios in the basement. So how they support research. They teach classes in using software, 3D software called Blender. So we help students with like the graphics for their publications. So this is something published online that a student worked on. We provide virtual reality. We have virtual reality areas in the library that we can help them create these kind of images that you see architecture students doing. Support for teaching. We check out equipment. So if a student needs to go tape something or maybe do a performance, maybe a dance performance at the Moody Center for a class, they can check out equipment in the library, go over, and then come back and have help with the software in doing this video editing. So we just have staff that know how to do all this stuff. Of course, I don't know how to do any of this personally, but I'm really glad that we have staff that can help people with this. The GIS Data Center, what that stands for is it's a graphic interface, so you can take data and display it on a map. And that's become a real area of expertise for our library. We're known for this nationally now. One of the projects you'll see over here, this Imagine Rio project, that was a project of one of the architecture faculty, Faraz Eldada and Alana Metcalf. And what they do is you can click on links in this project on a map, and it brings up images of what happened over time in that area. So there's these geospatial codes that you put on, and you can click and bring up pictures of houses that would have been on that spot over a period of time. So that project got a lot of kudos and was just a good source of a lot of training for graduate students learning how to do this geospatial mapping. And then we had a young woman who worked in the Woodson Research Center creating an exhibit about kind of the history of Black student experience at Rice. And she did a project working on coeducation and integration. And that project ended up being such a success that she continued to work on that after she finished the class. She was a chemical engineer and got really interested in digital humanities. This is just another example of a project somebody did working with library staff, looking at the density of London water fountains and cattle troughs by borough. So you can look and see where there was water in London, that kind of thing. So the library, as you can see, we try to integrate and work specifically with classes so that students come in and they work with a librarian on their project directly. So this is a interview with Alana Metcalf, who was the chair of history, working with the students on how to use all of this software and digital tools. Working with a history graduate student on preparing data for his dissertation. And a lot of these things are new with these digital humanities projects. What that is analyzing, mapping. Everybody uses data now. Even the humanities students use tons of data in their projects. Another quote from an anthropology PhD student. One of the projects that we had last year were some art history graduate student who was comparing photographs of images of women in the Civil War, comparing those to holding babies with holding soldiers, and they analyzed all these photographs that were in the Museum of Fine Arts Houston and here using different software. So we have something called the Digital Scholarship Archive, and faculty deposit their articles into this Digital Scholarship Archive. We have all the Rice theses and dissertations, and What we're trying to do there is sort of change the whole landscape of publishing so that we don't have to buy all these journals that we purchase. We want people to put all of their content in this open source software. So this has been a big project for the library the last couple of years. And then I just wanted to talk briefly about the university's response to the pandemic. We had lots and lots of researchers involved on campus in doing COVID research. And I'm sure you've all read about the famous immunology people that graduated from Rice that developed the different vaccines for both Pfizer and Moderna. But there's a huge amount of expertise on campus on investigating protein shapes and spikes and all of that. So the library's been collecting all of that information and putting that in our digital scholarship archive. We've also been collecting oral histories from people about how the pandemic affected student social life and working remotely. And we had a whole cadre of international students last year who never came to campus. So trying to collect their stories. So, in the future, people might do research, kind of a social history of how the pandemic affected student life, that kind of thing. So the library's been supporting that as well. We had the music librarian has been working with the Shepherd School on trying to bring more Asian music to the university, and actually went to China with a professor to buy more Asian composers and Asian music scripts. So that's been really exciting. I wanted to talk a little bit about this Fondren Fellows program. And what that is we were super excited 3 years ago. The development office called me and said an alum from the class of 1950 had left the library $3 million, and he wanted to have it go towards something with experiential learning. So we created this program where we actually pay students to do research, working with either a library mentor or a faculty mentor, doing research like that project I talked about, the young woman that was looking at Black experience history. So we actually, students either can come up with a project and apply, or we have the mentors come up with a project and apply. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the projects. So one of the projects, one of the early ones, was looking at the Civil War letters in the Woodson and making this interactive map that you can click on, and it will bring up diaries and photos and all kinds of things about what happened in these different locations. So this endowment, now we end up having around $100,000 a year that students can apply and then do these experiential research projects. One of them, I'm sure you read in the paper about that convict leasing that went on in Sugar Land, where people would, when the slaves were freed, people would often be arrested for very minor things, and then they would actually be sort of enslaved and work for people for free. So this convict leasing project, some history department faculty have worked on that, and we've had students that have been very interested in looking into that. We have, just a wide variety of projects that the students have done, and this is a really exciting thing for the library. So one thing that with the future of the library, a lot of the library, if you've been in here recently, is still quite, back stuck in the 1940s. We have no sprinklers, our stacks are really close together. So we are always constantly thinking of how we can renovate and better use our space. And that's one big advantage that we have from moving so many of the lesser used books off campus, that we can renovate and have the space here on campus used more for study rooms and study and group projects. And this photo of the two people on the booth is from NC State. A few years ago, David Lebron, then Provost Marilyn Miranda, and I went and visited the new library at NC State, and Duke had done a huge renovation. And they have one of these data visualization labs and gaming software and really quite incredible spaces. And some of the things that we're talking about with the future library is more of this continuing on that kind of, the Oshman engineering design kitchen has been so successful, kind of taking that to a library step of a teaching and learning kitchen, which we would call talk. But combining, the writing center is in the library. And we work closely with those freshman writing intensive seminars, but helping students learn how to do research, and it's such a rapidly changing environment that, it's really important that freshmen, and last week there was an article in the Houston Chronicle about so many public schools don't have libraries anymore, and they don't have librarians. So what happens when some of these students get to university like Rice, they don't know how to do research, and sometimes they're kind of intimidated and they don't ask for help. So we're working really hard at making the library staff available to freshmen so they're not intimidated, and they figure out that hey, the more people that can help you learn how to do research and write early on, the better off you're going to be as a student. One of the things we'd like to do is build a data lab, and this is a picture of Duke's Data and Visualization Services Lab. So in the future, the library is a big collaborator on campus. We collaborate with the Moody Center on art projects and interpretive dance and exhibits. We collaborate with the data people on campus with the data lab idea of kind of a one-stop shop that may be staffed with IT people. We may have graduate students that would be sort of a mentor to help a student figure out, what software do they use, what classes should they take, an R class, a Python class, but how are they going to be able to create some of these images like with Blender and these red blood cells floating around, that kind of thing. So, we're looking for in the future more interdisciplinary collaborations, helping with research competitiveness, and then making the university more visible in the future. I'm going to go a little bit fast over this because I talked about this. So another thing, obviously, the library supports our collections, and collections of all kinds of things, online materials, print materials. We subscribe to lots of electronic resources. So the jobs in the library have changed a lot over the past few years, where we can support people working remotely. They can get access to all kinds of online databases. And it's a constant kind of updating of all the different protocols that allow people to get into the things that we're paying for, that they're supposed to be paying for, as well as continuing to collect, some print materials. So I just wanted to also just briefly touch on some of the recent renovations that we've done. This basement picture with the yellow, that's the Digital Media Commons. And we moved them back from Herring Hall about 6 years ago. And that is a very heavily used space in the building. You can also see down here these blue chairs. The Friends of Fondren Library is a membership organization that supports the library and also has programs. And they were very, very key in raising money to enable us to buy new furniture for the first floor south reading room. That used to be where we had thousands of print journals, and now we get very few journals in a print format. So we were able to renovate that, and that's a very, very popular student study area. And we did something last year that was really interesting. We bought this software that monitors the number of wireless connections. So we have an interactive map when students come in the building. It's kind of a heat map of where people are, so they can decide where to go study, looking at kind of building occupancy in different areas, which I just think is really cool because students really like that. And then we renovated the Woodson Research Center in the 6th floor. That's been probably 10 years ago, but those are still really nice spaces. And then we had a gift and we renovated the study rooms. And, you know, it was interesting. We do a lot of user focus groups and, like I said, surveys. When we talk to the students about what they wanted in those study rooms, we have 54 study rooms. And I think the key circulated like 36,000 times last year. The students are really looking for quiet places to go do their courses remotely. But I thought they would want more technology in these study rooms. And they said, no, we want comfortable chairs. We want better lighting. We want soundproofing. You know, we don't want the technology in there. We just want quiet, comfortable places to study. So just more images of that South reading room, people studying. And then I did want to mention, I think it was your president at the beginning talked about the SRUW endowment. So that's a really nice endowment that we have that is used for the benefit of the Woodson Research Center. And an example of what we would do with money from an endowment that supports an area. A few years ago, we went and digitized all the back years of the thresher and made them searchable. So we outsourced that to a company that literally scanned box after box of threshers. And then our staff did metadata to make that searchable. But that's the kind of thing that we would do with an endowment that supports an area. So anyway, that's my presentation, and I appreciate you all listening, and hope you have some questions for me. Okay, so here's some questions. Oh, so the notes are appearing on the slide. Okay. I've heard that the rice owl that Dr. Lovett, and then that got cut off.
Go down to.
Okay, and the doc talk, somebody posted that, great. Yes, continues. Oh, on the Greek coin. You know, I'm not sure, but I could follow up and ask somebody in the Woodson Research Center that. And I'm happy to see Elizabeth Labanowski here. She's my relative. Her husband is, and my brother-in-law are brothers. So great to see you, Liz.
And I submitted a question to you.
I didn't know you were in this group. Okay, so our classes for various programs covering data preservation, some of them are, yes. So if you're interested in that, get in touch with me or somebody in the library. We really like to encourage, I know it's been hard during this pandemic because we have had to limit access to the library at different times, but you know, that's one of our key things. People become librarians because we like to help people. It's kind of a helper profession, like being a teacher. And we love it when we get good questions from people with, you know, asking things about the history of the university or people wanting to use things in the building. We love that. So we really usually welcome everyone to come in and use the library. And we're open again to the public as of yesterday. So you're welcome to come back in again. Oh, Julie?
Hi, Sarah. I think you heard probably in the business part of our meeting that getting reports from Rice about our various endowments and funding and so forth has been a problem over the past, I don't know how many years. And it doesn't come from the library, it comes from the whatever, there's this office that takes care of endowments, and I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, as I said, we only get, sorry?
Development office.
That's it, the development office. We get a report once a year and it's very late. And I remember seeing the reports and for the SRUW library endowment, and it would list of 2 or 3 books that were the endowment bought that year. And that's it. So I was just fascinating to hear, were you saying that our endowment was used for that digitalization thresher?
That was actually kind of an example of what it could be used for, because I have a binder back here that's got lists of different endowments, and then some of them are for specific purposes. So the SRUW endowment says it's to be used for the benefit of the Woodson Research Center. So you should be getting, you could ask them for a stewardship report if you'd like to know specifically what your money is being used for. They can provide you with that.
See, I'm wondering if once a year, you or someone could come and participate in our business part of the meeting and
Mhm.
just give us a little report on our endowment fund for the library. And
Sure.
let me give some background on this. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say that when I came, or since I've been with SRUW, for understandable reasons, most of our effort has gone towards improving our scholarship fund. So we have a scholarship endowment fund. I am totally in favor of that, but I also really love the library, and I've been a contributor to the library through the annual fund for years. So I didn't even know at first we had a SRUW library endowment fund. But once I found out, I started trying to get us to put more money into that fund. It's been a problem because for the last couple of years, of course, with COVID and everything, we haven't been having our meetings in person. But another issue is that now we're participating in the 24-hour challenge.
Right.
So our members are giving money through that, which means they get to elect when they decide, do they want to give it to the scholarship endowment or to the library endowment. And so we have funneled more money to the library through that mechanism, although I'm not sure, because it goes to Rice and then Rice has to do the transfer. Anyway, I am particularly interested in doing more to help our library. And I think having reports on what you're doing with the funding you get would be a help with that.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good point. And we'd love to come and talk to your group. The head of special collections, Amanda Foki, I showed you a picture of her hanging up that exhibit. She's a great speaker. She would love to do a tour for you of the Woodson, either in person or via Zoom. You could learn more about the various projects they're working on and get specific information about what your endowment's going to support. So that's very doable. I do want to second what Amanda said about this Imagine One. July 1st, the university cut over to this new cloud-based Oracle system, and it has been difficult to get a lot of information out of the financial dashboard. That's an understatement, but it will get better. They're hiring new consultants. They have a task force working on that. So you will be able to get your reports soon. But I actually got that financial data from an old report from June 30th, because it's been a problem to get current financial data. But that's a good point, Julian. We would love to share more information with you about that, because I agree, the more people know what you do with the money that you donate, the more likely they are to donate more money, or if they know how much what care we take of special collections, your archival materials. If you find, you're all mostly Rice people, if you find historical scrapbooks or memorabilia, they would love to get that in the Woodson. The Jewish archive is collecting all kinds of memorabilia from various synagogues, and that all started after Hurricane Harvey, when Gray's Bayou flooded so many of the synagogues, and Melissa Keene, the university historian, and Josh Furman and Amanda were called by some of the synagogues to come and lend their expertise in drying out all of these records. And that led to a really nice collaboration with this Houston Jewish archive. So, we would love to get your memorabilia. We have a really great special collections department. We have a lot of things here that in some cities would be at the public library, but they've been very underfunded in their special collections. So we end up with records of various civic groups that may in some cities be in the public library, but we have a very strong public service mission here at the library. So we're happy to make those things available and get them processed for the community. Yes.
Hi, Sarah. I've been making notes that when we make our program arrangements for next year, that we could maybe have a tour of the Woodson
Oh, yeah.
and have a tour of the new arrangements in the library. Also, when you said slave ships, the work on, who's leading that up?
That's a history professor named Daniel Dominguez
Okay,
Silva, and he's in the history department, and they had a symposium in person here in December with speakers from all over the country. But the library is actually helping him with. There's a new consortium with the Smithsonian and then some universities in the Caribbean, and he just got a really big NIH grant to start looking at the records of slave voyages in between like Africa and India. That they've been working on this project with slave voyages from Africa to North America, but it's going to expand. And he's really getting a lot of recognition nationally and internationally for his work on curating these slave voyages.
He spoke to our group.
Yeah, we had Dr. Dominguez da Silva as a speaker. We
Oh,
also had Caleb McDaniel as a speaker.
Oh, okay.
So in both cases, when they were less known than they are now, we invited them to speak to our group.
There was an article about this in the paper, I want to say last fall, that I cut out thinking it would be really interesting to hear. It is a really prestigious project, I think.
Yeah.
I
exactly.
was also thinking because we know that you assist in so much important research, that we might have some people be speakers about their work with the library and what it's provided for them. Because Julie, I agree so much with Julie. Our library is very important. And just this past year, I finished my thesis for a diploma program in liberal studies. And I'll tell you, the library, of course, was closed. I couldn't go in there, but the wonderful electronic access to the collection, but your people were wonderful. At first, I'd make the order, and then my daughter would go over, and there was this very nice young man, and he had all the books in sacks, and she'd pick them up and bring them to me. It was so personal. Well, then as things loosened up, I'd go with her, and he recognized her, which makes you feel wonderful that she wasn't just an errand girl.
Yeah. Well,
I want to congratulate you on the quality of the help staff.
that's great. I'll pass that along, because I think we have a great staff too. And I do feel like the library is the intellectual hub of the campus. And I hope we can continue that even in this digital world, and, get back to more in-person things again. But, Zoom is good for some things. Look, all these people here today.
Yeah,
presentation.
we're going to continue a lot of our series on Zoom because we have people from all over. One time, one of our, she's a member from past time, was tuning in from England someplace. I also want to say to you that the importance of the library, if we can do anything to help with, for instance, show some of the, I'm thinking as a member of ARA, the Association of Rice Alumni, to highlight some of the wonderful work that's being done, that would be something. Of course, it sounds like more work for you, but I'm sure you have helpers.
Well, the staff would love that. We've got some really talented staff members. And I did, when you were talking about having the Zoom tour with Allison Moody, and Allison's a fabulous speaker. That's a great program. We have a lot of great artwork here in the library. We have, I think, 6 beautiful Dorothy Hood paintings. And then we have Albert and Elizabeth Kidd donated these Lino Taglia Pietra glass boats that hang on the first floor. And I know I was talking to a group of students about a renovation we did on the 6th floor and this artwork. And he said, you know what, we feel like the administration really cares about us when they buy us really comfortable furniture and have beautiful artwork in the library. It really elevates your studying when you have a nice place to study. So I
Well,
appreciate that comment.
our library is spectacular. It's so different from most libraries you go in.
And
Yeah.
isn't there a collection of SRUW material at the library?
Yes, there is.
Yeah, in the Woodson Research Center.
And doesn't Karen Rogers have examples of Sammy, something that might go into the collection at the library? We have a member that gave a program on Sammy, and I was fascinated by her props. So that's just of interest because our membership here has been at Rice during different periods, and it's kind of fun to know what Sammy's been doing.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at the questions. Somebody asked about a place in the library to listen to music. And unfortunately, we really don't have anywhere right now the way we used to. So much of the music is streaming. So that's really changed a lot. And then what are the criteria for special collections? We do take documents and donations from Rice alumni, and Amanda Foki is the head of special collections. And if you have materials that you think might be of interest, contact Amanda and she'll work with you on that. But we have another project that we have a lot of materials that we released recently donated was this paranormal collection. But I don't know if any of you've heard about that, but Jeffrey Kripal in the religious, then this is why I love working at Rice. You just meet such interesting people. But Jeffrey Kripal is in the history department, and he's very interested in the paranormal. And we have, I think there's like 3 or 4 graduate students working on this now. A lot of it is in Russian, but it's like all these sightings of paranormal experiences. And they're having a conference on that here in March. And we literally have thousands of manuscripts and primary source materials now in people's intersection with paranormal experiences. And if you talk to Dr. Kripal, he is a fascinating person. Just very interesting professors with these that have these areas that they go into research, and it's just fast. I think I love hearing about all these different things that they're working on. So he would be another really good speaker. They were filming a CNN clip in here last week in the Woodson with Dr. Kripal and this paranormal collection. And I think they may be making a documentary on it. So, because I had to give special permission for them to come in when we were closed to the public, and they had made these arrangements to travel here months ago. And, we've just been so strict about all these COVID protocols.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Thank you for that. She's going to have our program.
Well, we've got it done for next year.
Any other questions? There's Miranda.
Miranda?
Hi, Sarah. So I'm a Rice alum. I'm also a librarian. So I was really, really happy to tune in for this program today. So I could ask you all sorts of behind the scenes kind of questions that probably wouldn't be of general interest, but the question that I have actually has to do with an activity I participate in as a Rice alum, which is doing admissions interviews. So I think probably some other folks in this group participate. They have a group called RAVA, which is the Rice Alumni Volunteers for Admissions. And I would love to highlight some of the things from Fondren that might be of particular interest to prospective students, to incoming students. I think the Fondren Fellows program is something I'll be talking about because a lot of the students I talk to express an interest in doing undergraduate research projects.
Mm-hmm.
So I always talk about that very generally, but that's a really nice specific example. But as, I don't know if like prospective student tours come through the library, or you have an opportunity to talk to students who are, high school students who are looking at Rice, but are there particular things you think might appeal to students who are looking at Rice as a potential college for them?
We do, they do bring student tours through the library. Unfortunately, they had to do that virtually this last year. They were doing tours in person again in the fall. But I think that Fondren Fellows would be something to highlight. But then I also think the work in geospatial mapping projects and the digital media commons would also be something to highlight to potential students. Yeah. That's great, though.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you. Yeah, it seems like I talked to a lot of students who want to go into the medical, one or another version of the medical field, whether it's clinical or research. And but yeah, I think the GIS research and the data visualization and all that, which I know is something that libraries are really getting into now. So highlighting that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Well, one thing that we've done, we have a lot of student workers in the library. We're open a lot of hours. And what we found is that they create a really strong cohort with each other. And I think research shows that students, that any adult contact they have in college is a good thing towards graduation rates. So we've tried to really do these student worker cohorts and get them together and recognize their work. And I think what we found is that a lot of the students that do like these Fondren Fellows programs